When we think of ancient Rome, we often picture grand architecture, brilliant philosophers, and the disciplined order of the Roman legions. It's easy to romanticize the empire as a beacon of civilization, but beneath the surface of this grandeur was a darker reality, a world filled with corruption, violence, and indulgence that often stood in direct opposition to the ideals of Stoicism. While Stoicism taught virtue, self-control, and rationality, much of daily life in ancient Rome ignored these teachings altogether. The streets of Rome were chaotic, the ruling elite was often corrupt, and the pursuit of pleasure overshadowed the pursuit of virtue. Today, we're going to explore the darker side of ancient Rome and uncover how far its realities strayed from the Stoic ideals that many of its great thinkers championed. Let's begin with the streets of Rome, a place that was anything but Stoic. The city was a bustling hub of commerce, entertainment, and survival, but it was also overcrowded, unsanitary, and dangerous. The narrow streets were packed with vendors, beggars, thieves, and the constant threat of fires. Crime was rampant, and the Roman justice system often failed to protect its citizens. Stoic teachings emphasized rationality and composure, but surviving in Rome often required cunning and aggression. For the average Roman, life was a daily struggle to secure food, shelter, and safety. Many couldn't afford the luxury of contemplating virtue or practicing self-control when survival was on the line. Even within the grand villas of the Roman elite, the reality was far from Stoic. These homes were often filled with intrigue, power struggles, and excess. The paterfamilias, or male head of the household, wielded absolute authority, sometimes abusing this power in ways that violated Stoic principles of fairness and justice. Slaves, who formed the backbone of Roman society, were treated as property and subjected to harsh punishments, a stark contrast to the Stoic belief in the inherent worth of all individuals. The darker side of Roman entertainment also reveals how far the society strayed from Stoic ideals. Gladiator games, held in massive arenas like the Colosseum, were a spectacle of violence and bloodlust. Thousands of spectators gathered to cheer as men fought to the death, wild animals were slaughtered, and elaborate executions were staged. For the Stoics, who valued compassion and rationality, these games were a disturbing reflection of humanity's worst impulses. Marcus Aurelius himself avoided attending the games whenever possible, writing about the importance of rising above such brutal distractions. Yet, the games were wildly popular among the Roman populace, offering an escape from the hardships of daily life. For many, the thrill of the arena outweighed any moral objections. The political world of Rome was another arena where Stoic principles were frequently ignored. Corruption and betrayal were common, and leaders often prioritized personal ambition over the well-being of the state. Bribery, assassinations, and power grabs defined the Roman political system, creating an environment where virtue was more of an ideal than a reality. Even Stoic figures like Seneca, who served as an advisor to Emperor Nero, found themselves entangled in the dark realities of Roman politics. Seneca tried to guide Nero with Stoic wisdom, but ultimately failed to curb the emperor's excesses. Nero's reign became a symbol of the corruption and decadence that permeated Roman society. Religion in ancient Rome also highlighted the disconnect between Stoic teachings and daily life. While Stoicism emphasized rationality and living in harmony with nature, Roman religion was steeped in superstition and ritual. The Romans worshipped a pantheon of gods, performed sacrifices to gain favor, and consulted oracles for guidance. For the Stoics, who believed in accepting the natural order of the universe without trying to manipulate it, these practices must have seemed irrational. Yet, Roman society was deeply religious, and failing to observe the proper rituals could lead to social ostracism or worse. Perhaps the most glaring contradiction to Stoic teachings was the culture of excess that defined the Roman elite. Lavish feasts, extravagant clothing, and opulent parties were a way of life for the wealthy. These displays of wealth stood in stark contrast to the Stoic ideal of moderation. Seneca often criticized the excesses of his peers, warning that the pursuit of luxury would lead to moral decay. Yet Seneca himself lived a life of considerable wealth, highlighting the difficulty of practicing Stoicism in a society driven by greed and ambition. Even Roman family life revealed the challenges of living according to Stoic principles. While Stoicism encouraged mutual respect and rational decision-making, Roman households were often hierarchical and authoritarian. The paterfamilias had the power to dictate every aspect of family life, from financial decisions to marriages. This authority could lead to abuse, creating an environment where fairness and compassion were often secondary to maintaining control. The treatment of women in ancient Rome also reflected the darker side of daily life. While some women, particularly those from elite families, had access to education and influence, most lived under strict societal constraints. Stoicism, with its emphasis on rationality and equality of the soul, could have provided a counterpoint to these inequalities. However, the societal norms of Rome often overshadowed these ideals. Slavery, too, was a glaring contradiction to Stoic teachings. Epictetus, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, was born a slave and used Stoicism to rise above his circumstances. He taught that true freedom came from mastering one's mind, not one's external conditions. Yet, the widespread practice of slavery in Rome stood in stark contrast to the Stoic belief in universal reason and the dignity of all humans. This disconnect between Stoic philosophy and Roman reality raises an important question. Why were Stoic teachings so often ignored in daily life? The answer lies in the tension between idealism and practicality. While Stoicism offered a guide for living virtuously, it required discipline, reflection, and a willingness to prioritize long-term well-being over short-term gratification. For many Romans, these ideals were overshadowed by the immediate demands and temptations of their environment. But Stoicism wasn't entirely absent from Roman life. It inspired individuals to rise above the darkness, to practice self-discipline, and to strive for virtue, even in the face of adversity. Figures like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus remind us that while Stoicism couldn't transform Roman society as a whole, it provided a framework for personal growth and resilience. While the darker realities of ancient Rome often overshadowed Stoic teachings, it's important to remember that this philosophy wasn't meant to change society overnight. Stoicism wasn't a political movement or a call for social reform. It was a personal philosophy designed to help individuals navigate life's challenges with resilience and virtue. And yet, the chaotic and indulgent nature of Roman society often made it difficult for people to fully embrace Stoic principles. Take the Roman political system, for example. Corruption and betrayal were the norm. Senators and officials jockeyed for power, using bribery, coercion, and even murder to achieve their ambitions. This environment stood in direct opposition to the Stoic ideals of honesty, humility, and justice. Leaders like Marcus Aurelius tried to embody these values, but even he couldn't escape the darker forces of Roman politics. His reign was marked by constant wars, political conspiracies, and the eventual appointment of his son Commodus, whose corrupt and self-indulgent rule pushed Rome further into decline. For the average Roman citizen, survival often took precedence over philosophical reflection. Many Romans lived in poverty, working long hours to make ends meet. Their days were consumed by practical concerns, securing food, avoiding crime, and dealing with the unpredictability of city life. In this environment, Stoicism's emphasis on inner peace and self-control could feel like a luxury they simply couldn't afford. Even in moments of leisure, Roman society often rejected Stoic ideals. Public entertainment, such as gladiator games and chariot races, thrived on violence, spectacle, and excess. These events weren't just distractions, they were a reflection of Roman values, where strength, dominance, and public approval were prized above all else. While Stoics like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca criticized these spectacles as distractions from true virtue, the average Roman embraced them as a vital part of daily life. Religion in Rome also revealed the tension between Stoicism and societal norms. The Stoics believed in a rational, ordered universe and emphasized living in harmony with nature. Roman religion, by contrast, was deeply ritualistic and superstitious. From animal sacrifices to elaborate ceremonies, the focus was often on appeasing the gods rather than seeking a deeper understanding of the natural order. For a Stoic, the reliance on omens and rituals would have seemed irrational, yet these practices were deeply ingrained in Roman culture. Another glaring contradiction between Stoicism and Roman life was the culture of excess among the elite. Lavish feasts, extravagant clothing, and opulent homes were symbols of status and power. The wealthy elite reveled in displays of luxury that would have made any Stoic philosopher cringe. Seneca, despite his immense wealth, often warned against the dangers of greed and indulgence. He wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." And yet, even Seneca struggled to fully embody the simplicity he preached, highlighting the difficulty of living a Stoic life in a society driven by ambition and materialism. Family life in Rome was another area where Stoic ideals were often ignored. The paterfamilias, or male head of the household, held absolute authority over his family. While Stoicism encouraged fairness and mutual respect, the reality of Roman family dynamics could be far more authoritarian. Women and children had limited rights, and slaves were considered property. This hierarchical structure often clashed with the Stoic belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all individuals. Slavery, in particular, was a stark contradiction to Stoic teachings. Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, was born a slave and used Stoicism to rise above his circumstances. He taught that true freedom comes from mastering one's mind, not from external conditions. Yet Roman society relied heavily on the labor of slaves, treating them as commodities rather than individuals. This systemic injustice was rarely challenged, even by those who embraced Stoic philosophy. So, why did Stoicism fail to reshape Roman society? The answer lies in the very nature of the philosophy. Stoicism is deeply personal. It's about mastering your own thoughts, emotions, and actions. It doesn't demand systemic change. Instead, it focuses on individual virtue. In a society as vast and complex as Rome, this inward focus limited Stoicism's ability to address larger societal issues. While it provided tools for personal growth and resilience, it wasn't designed to reform a society steeped in corruption, inequality, and excess. While the darker realities of daily life in ancient Rome often overshadowed the Stoic ideal, there's something profoundly human in this struggle. The Romans, for all their flaws and contradictions, were not so different from us. They wrestled with ambition, greed, and fear, just as we do today. And while their society may not have embraced Stoicism as a collective ethos, the philosophy's timeless teachings remind us that even amidst chaos, individuals can choose a better path. Stoicism was never about perfection. Even Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most famous Stoic, wrote not as a master of the philosophy, but as a student struggling to apply its principles. His meditations were personal reflections, a way to remind himself to stay on the Stoic path despite the pressures of ruling an empire. This humility is one of Stoicism's greatest strengths. It doesn't demand that we be flawless, only that we strive for progress. The dark side of ancient Rome reminds us that Stoicism isn't about changing the world overnight. It's about changing how we navigate the world. The Romans who embraced Stoicism didn't try to eliminate corruption, excess, or violence. They tried to live virtuously despite it. And in doing so, they left behind a legacy of wisdom that continues to inspire us. Today, we face many of the same challenges as the Romans. Our world is filled with distractions, temptations, and injustices that make it difficult to live according to our ideals. But Stoicism offers us a way forward. It teaches us to focus on what we can control, to let go of what we cannot, and to act with courage, wisdom, and compassion. It's not about escaping the darkness, it's about finding light within it. So, as we reflect on the dark side of daily life in ancient Rome, let's take a moment to consider how we can apply Stoic principles in our own lives. What challenges are you facing right now? What is within your control, and what can you let go of? How can you act with virtue, even in difficult circumstances? These questions aren't just philosophical, they're practical tools for navigating the complexities of life. If this exploration of Stoicism and ancient Rome has resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit from these timeless lessons. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights into ancient wisdom, history, and how we can apply these ideas to our modern lives. That said, Stoicism wasn't entirely absent from Roman life. It inspired individuals to rise above the darkness, to act with integrity, and to strive for virtue, even in the face of overwhelming challenges. Figures like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus remind us that, while Stoicism couldn't transform Rome as a whole, it offered a path for individuals to navigate the chaos with grace and clarity. In many ways, the tension between Stoicism and Roman society reflects our own struggles today. We too live in a world filled with distractions, pressures, and contradictions. We aspire to live virtuously, to stay calm in the face of adversity, but we often fall short, and that's okay. Like the Romans, we can use Stoic teachings as a guide, not to escape the chaos of life, but to face it with courage and wisdom.